and -e, I suppose that's for escape. Strange that it couldn't be stranger. I love it when things like this happen to me. I'm like a magnet for problems. It is amazing. Now let's give it these, and I'm gonna go ahead like this. Event not found. I hate you so badly. Okay, let's try it the other way around. Event not found because it's escaping. I have honestly no idea why the exclamation mark won't work here. I'm gonna go ahead and check that out for you in the follow-up tutorial, but this is quite interesting. It has intrigued my imagination here. I'm gonna go ahead and figure it out in the next tutorial why it hasn't actually worked out and why you cannot put an exclamation mark at the end. And I suspect it's gonna be something interesting. But in any case, I have shown you how tail works. This is very important for you. It's gonna help you out a ton, especially when monitoring log files. You will type in tail, then space -f space tar text. Well, so not tar text, you will obviously use your own file. You can specify a path to the file, to any file that you want. As long as you have the permissions to actually pull the information out of it, you're good to go. Also, not a bad thing is when you're starting up a program, you see that something is wrong, that it doesn't want to start, it's not giving you any errors, it can be problematic. You go into the log files in var log, and there you find the appropriate log for that particular program. Usually it should be in messages or something of a kind. And then type in tail-f, type messages here most likely, and then see what happens in the moment when you start the program. Just have a look at the message, and then if you can actually figure it, if you can get that message there, then you can go online on the net, or you can even solve it yourself if you just get the error message from there. Anyway, let's go ahead and close this file, stop the monitoring of the file. And the universal pretty much interrupt for Unix Linux-like systems is Control-C. I know it can be a bit annoying, primarily because Control-V and Control-C do not work in the terminal as they work everywhere else as copy and paste. Rather, instead, Control-C works as an interrupt. So now that we have that out of the way, let us go ahead and examine this this tar file. Let's maximize the screen. Delete the F because we don't need the live monitoring. Now I have the file modified, but guess what? We can combine what we have learned from the previous tutorials. So just type in clear and and cat-n tar text grep. We'll grep 1. And there we go. We indeed have only that part from the file. What I've just written, this command, you should know what it does and what it means by this point of time. I have explained it in great detail in the previous tutorials. Anyway, let's go ahead and focus on the tar, finally, after long last. So you would type in tar, and then space, then dash, minus sign or hyphen, however you wish to call it. The first argument, C, that instructs the tar to create or override the to create a file if it doesn't exist. If it exists, overwrite it. Or, yeah, just write over it. I don't care. I do care, but that's just what you're telling to the computer. If it exists, overwrite it. Next, we have V, and what have we learned that V represents? Well, verbosity, verbose output. You want the computer to be telling you what to do. Although with a lot of backups, since a lot of them are automated tasks, it's probably a good idea to omit the V. Just to omit it completely and not have it here, unless you're doing the manual backup. Then you want the V there to actually see what is going on. But if you have a scheduled task that the machine does that you will not see, and most likely you will not even be physically present there when the backup happens, there is no need to waste resources of the system. You're not wasting a lot, you're wasting a very small portion, but it doesn't matter. It pays to be efficient in every situation. Next up, we have P. P is used to preserve the permissions on files, so you don't have to mess around with it again. We have learned what permissions are, and there's the three sets of permissions for users, groups, and world. Why is this important? Why would you want to preserve the permission file structure? Well, file hierarchy. Well, imagine the following scenario. You are basically performing a backup of a website, and you want to back up the entire site with all the file structure, the whole file structure, everything that is in there. Now, I don't know, there could be like 500, 1,000 folders, files, whatever in there. And imagine if you just compress them and unpack them somewhere and you don't have the permissions set up the way they were set up there. What are you going to do? I mean, you've just restored a backup, and now on top of that, you have to go through every single file and adjust the permissions there once again to match the original permissions, provided of course that you have the original file somewhere, which would be ridiculous. I mean, it would take a ridiculous amount of time. And as you would do this, the chances of you making an error and making your server unsecure by giving a write permission somewhere to some file or execute permission to a wrong file are astronomical. Basically, if there are enough files there, if you need to change like 1,000 files, your chances of making an error are practically 100%. That is why we have the P option to preserve these things. All that you need to do after you have preserved the permissions within a backup file, once you restore it, you just copy it to a folder where you want it, and that's it. The permissions are the same. You don't need to do anything more to it, which is fantastic. Next up, we want to compress it. Now, strictly speaking, this argument is not this is not one of those mandatory arguments. Neither is P, of course, but it is useful. Now, we are telling Tart that we want the file compressed, so we want smaller file size, which is of extreme importance, and as I said, it always pays to be efficient. You don't have to compress it, of course, but there is no reason why you shouldn't. You're saving disk space. I know that a lot of people say that it's cheap and that it's free or something of a kind, but most of those people generally don't do anything serious that requires large amounts of space on your drives. Sure, 2-3 terabytes are relatively cheap, but try getting 100 or something of a kind and see what happens. Especially if you're making backups of your databases, of your websites, and if you are continuously doing this of a large database, you can't make two backups. You literally have to make one, and then the one that you made previously has to be overwritten by the new one because you don't have enough space. It's impossible. Or you have another option of buying a ton load of more storage, which in turn costs money to buy and costs money to maintain, and so on and so forth. That is why you should always compress. There is no reason not to. You won't break your files. I know, as I stated previously, I do believe that I have anyway, that in Windows things can go pretty badly when you compress things. I don't know, you can have problems with files, they can get broken, corrupt, well, not broken, but the files can get corrupt or something of a kind. That does not happen in Linux. To say that doesn't happen at all would be improper of me, but I mean 99% of the time it won't happen, so there is no reason why you shouldn't do it. Anyway, the next argument is F. F simply allows the tar to create a new file on the file system. And now I have written out here for myself two things that you can write here. So this one you do need to write. This is the file where it's going to get compressed. So this is what you are compressing it to. And this is what you are backing up, so destination of what you want to back up. perhaps I should have renamed them like backing up file and file